After months and months of speculating and talking, it is time to reveal my 7 picks, what I think the Bengals are going to do in the 2023 NFL Draft. Let's get into it, starting with pick 28. Hi again, everyone, and welcome in to Cincinnati Bengals Talk. I'm James Rapien of allbengals.com. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel throughout this draft process. We are going to be at Paycor Stadium on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You're going to hear from Zach Taylor. You're going to hear from coordinators, position coaches, and I'll give you my thoughts on each and every pick, whether they trade up, whether they trade down, whether they move all around, whether they trade all 7 picks for, well, insert whoever. By the way, not doing a specific video on it, but Joe Burrow, the Bengals picked up his 5th-year option on Tuesday. What does it mean? Well, it's really simple. It's a formality. The Bengals are always picking up his 5th-year option. They're still going to continue to negotiate a long-term extension with him, but he's under contract for the next 2 years, and the last year of his rookie deal is 2023. That 5th-year option is worth $29.5 million in 2024. So that's what we have for now. Quick note. Let's get into the mock draft. And look, there are certain guys that I'm in on. And unfortunately, I just don't think they're going to be there. I want this to be a realistic exercise, an exercise that gives you an idea of what I believe the Bengals are going to be thinking in the war room on Thursday and Friday and Saturday, but certainly Thursday with that first round pick. And so there are a lot of guys they could pick here. I think Dalton Kincaid, if he falls to 28, very well could be the top player on their board. I don't expect him to fall to 28. So I could mock him to the Bengals. I don't think he's going to be there. Guys like Myles Murphy, I've seen. I think that they're certainly a contender for the 28th pick. Not sure he's going to be there because he had top 15 hype. And then you talk to some analysts. I know my guy, Joe Goodberry, is like, looks more like a second rounder to me. I feel that way about Bryan Bresee. He's a contender, no doubt, for the 28th pick. I don't like it. He's a tall 3-tech. That hasn't produced consistently. That doesn't seem like a first rounder to me. 6'5" interior lineman. That's great if you're producing and you see it. Well, I haven't seen it. And just because there's flashes, that's not enough for the 28th pick. Lucas Van Ness, if he's there, I think he's a contender. Joey Porter Jr. could slide. And that's one of my things here is I think he could slide the Penn State corner. And if he's there at 28, do you take him? He might be the best player available. And I think the Bengals are going to go with the best player available. And that's what I really want to hammer home here because odds are I'm not going to get it right. Last year we had Dax Hill, right? The year before that I had Ja'Marr Chase. Are we going to go 3 for 3? Everybody had Joe Burrow, by the way, in 2020. I'm not sure if we're going to get it right this year. I'm trying to. And as I check these guys off and say, well, Kincaid won't be there. Michael Mayer, I think it's a little rich for the Bengals anyway, but he's not projected to be there. Darnell Washington, I know a lot of people are in on him. I don't think he's a candidate for the 28th pick. I don't think the Bengals are in on him at 28. Luke Musgrave, I know that's been out there this week. I don't believe that's the case either. So when I look at this, and not that they're not in on tight end in this draft because they are. I don't think they're in on those guys at 28. I look at it, and I keep coming back to my guy. And no, I'm not talking about Emmanuel Forbes. How many of you thought I was talking about Emmanuel Forbes? Here's the thing with Emmanuel Forbes. I think he's going to go much earlier. Because what's the fly in the ointment? He needs to put on a few pounds. He needs to get a McDonald's endorsement. He needs to get that Skyline endorsement that I'm trying to work on right now. Shout out the Skyline. Is that it? Because if that's the case, then okay, he can put on a few pounds. He's been healthy. He's been durable. He hits. It's not like he shies away from contact, and he makes plays in a playmaking game, in a pass-first game. How many cornerbacks are there in the league that can make game-changing plays the other way? I asked this the other day, and I thought about it. Mike Hilton had a pick 6. Has there been another Bengals pick 6 in the Zach Taylor era? I don't think so. Certainly not. There has been the other way, hurting the Bengals. But certainly not in favor of the Bengals. And so that would be my pick. I just don't think he's going to be there. So with all of that said, I think the dust is going to settle and the Bengals are going to see some guys, Adebawore out of Northwestern, where they have a maybe 35th on their board. They have someone like Calijah Kancey. Maybe he's there, maybe he's not. Maybe they're worried about the arm length. I think he's probably going to be gone. And they look at it and they say, you know what? Let's take the guy. Much like last year, where you take Dax Hill, and they didn't necessarily need Dax Hill, who's the top player on their board. There's a scenario, and some are going to say I'm crazy, but where Jahmyr Gibbs is the top player on their board. And I think he's going to be on Thursday night. Maybe not. Maybe he gets picked in the first 27 picks. I know some are going to say it's a reach. It is not. If they take him at 28, I would be on board with it. And I did an entire video explaining why. But I think it's going to unlock the offense. And so to me, this board is going to fall a certain way. I think there's going to be some surprises. Maybe Gibbs is one of those first round surprises and he goes in the top 20 or top 25. But if he's there at 28, I think the Bengals go that route. If not, pay attention to these corners, because some of these corners, if one of them falls, that's certainly on the list. Emmanuel Forbes, if he's there, I think they do a little pick six high step into to the podium and get the guy who had 6 pick sixes at Mississippi State. So it's interesting. My prediction for the Bengals 28th overall is Alabama running back Jahmyr Gibbs. Round 2 is quite interesting, because I'm sure some of you were like, what about offensive tackle? Based on what I've heard, Anton Harrison is not supposed to be there at 28. Dawand Jones is. And based on what I've heard, Dawand Jones is falling. And not just the smoke that you see publicly. Privately, it feels like he's falling. And so Dawand Jones might be there at 60. And if Dawand Jones is there at 60, I think the Bengals would be really excited to see him there. But not as excited as they would be if Iowa tight end Sam Laporta fell to 60. And some are going to say that's crazy. He's one of these top tight ends. There's no way he falls to 60. And I agree with that for the most part. But here's why I think it can happen and ultimately will happen. These tight ends are all over the place. There's a consensus like top 6, right? You have Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, Darnell Washington. And then you have Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, and then Sam Laporta. And so how does the NFL view these guys? I think there's going to be one of these top tight ends here. So I'm going to put Sam Laporta in, but maybe Darnell Washington falls to 60. In fact, it would not shock me. Joe and I talked about this on this channel, Joe Goodberry, that Sam Laporta, Darnell Washington, if Laporta went ahead of Washington, wouldn't shock me. I think the Bengals would love to have Laporta over Washington, to give you an example. But I think one of these top tight ends is going to be there. And if that's the case, I would have them taking Laporta over Dawand Jones. Why? Well, a big part of it would be Senior Bowl, Dawand Jones one day, and that's it. Can't weigh in at his pro day. Red flags. But let's say the top tight ends are gone on their board, and it's Darnell Washington or Dawand Jones or a cornerback, because corner could certainly be in play here. And I'll name some of those guys in a second. I think they might take Dawand Jones. So for those wanting right tackle help and maybe plug and play right tackle help, I think the price could be right at pick 60 if Dawand Jones does fall that far. That said, let's name some other guys. I already named some of the tight ends that could go. Tuli Tuipulotu is certainly a guy, edge out of USC. The Bengals were all in on him. They were looking at him. Lou Anarumo flew to Southern California to chat with him and look at him at USC's pro day. We will see there. DJ Turner, Cam Smith, Tyreek Stevenson, the cornerbacks. If Cam Smith falls for any reason, Tyreek Stevenson certainly could be in play at 60. DJ Turner, I know he's getting a lot of love right now, potential round 1. If he falls to 60, certainly someone I could see the Bengals taking. Julius Brents, another one out of Kansas State. That's kind of like the tier where I could see some of those guys. And I'll throw my next pick, my 3rd round pick, into that. Maybe the Bengals really like Darius Rush. And one other name, by the way, real quick. Andrew's going to hate this. One more name, Zach Charbonnet, UCLA. I could see the Bengals being interested in him at pick 60. Not sure he's there, but I could see it. That said, let's get to round 3, where I have the Bengals taking Darius Rush, cornerback, South Carolina. To me, this is pretty simple. You've hit the home runs where you just bolstered your offense at its 2 biggest weaknesses. I know some might be saying offensive tackle, but long-term, Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs right away for me. They're going to make an impact. And so round 3, you want to try to get the best defensive player you can. And obviously they want to address corner in a deep class. Darius Rush finds his way to the Bengals at the end of round 3. And I would love this pick. I think it's a great value pick. It's one of those where Cam Smith gets a lot of the love out of South Carolina. And he's had a really yo-yo type of pre-draft process where he was projected to be a first rounder, then fell to the second. Now he might go late first, early second. We'll see what happens with him. Certainly in the mix for the Bengals on the first 2 days of the draft. Darius Rush is my pick here, though. The Bengals obviously took a second-round corner last year. They triple back and take another corner on day 2, this time in round 3. Other guys that I think could be in the mix here, Tyjae Spears, the running back out of Tulane. I love his game. So if you don't get one of these top running backs, I think Spears is an interesting option. The only thing with him is there's some talk about a knee injury or a knee issue. And he had a torn ACL in the past, but you watch his game, heck, watch his film. We just talked about USC. This dude can run between the tackles, not a big guy, can catch the ball, isn't as explosive as Jahmyr Gibbs. Certainly isn't Jahmyr Gibbs as a prospect, but is a really, really good player. Devin Achane, by the way, out of Texas A&M. I like his game a lot too. If he's there at 92 and they haven't taken a running back, I like him. The problem with him is he's small. He is a track star, but he runs like a running back. It's not like he is not physical, but he's 5'8", 188. So will the Bengals be in on him round 3? I'm not sure. Other names to be aware of, Roschon Johnson out of Texas, certainly in the mix here in round 3. If Tuli Tuipulotu falls, Isaiah Foskey, Isaiah McGuire, Zach Harrison, just some of these defensive linemen that could potentially fall. All guys that should be on your radar. Yaya Diaby, by the way, guy I mentioned earlier, just because I got my list mixed up. There you go. And in one wide receiver, Jaden Reed, Michigan State. I think that could be an interesting spot for the Bengals to address wide receiver too, depending on how things shake out. Round 4, I have Kobe Turner, defensive tackle out of Wake Forest. I just mentioned it. The Bengals they're going to go defense in this draft. There's no doubt about it. The first 2 picks were offense. The next 2 picks, defense. Turner is a guy that should be able to come in right away and help in that 3-tech role in the interior of the Bengals defensive line and maybe develop into a bit more. But you look at it, they need to get a little bit younger in that defensive line room. Turner certainly helps them do that and gives them a guy that should be able to contribute right away. Not as an every down guy, but certainly in a role where he's playing significant snaps as a rookie. And let's stick with the defensive line in the 5th round, because Keandre Coburn is a nose tackle out of Texas. And this pick kind of stinks, not because of Coburn at all, but because the Bengals tried to address this a few years ago when they took Tyler Shelvin in the 4th round. And that was kind of a big swing, risk type of pick. Early day 3, you're like, let's take a big swing at a nose tackle. Maybe it'll work out and he'll be great next to DJ Reader. And it did not work at all. And he's out of the league. Last I checked, I don't think he got picked up anywhere. Keandre Coburn might not have the ceiling that Tyler Shelvin had coming into the league, but he certainly has a higher floor and should be able to stabilize that position. DJ Reader in the last year of his contract. Josh Tupou in the last year of his contract. You need a nose tackle, a young nose tackle that might not play a ton right away, but if there's an injury in the 5th round, you would certainly get a guy who could be a nice quality backup in year 1 and then potentially move into a more prominent role. And even if you re-sign DJ Reader, you still need someone for Josh Tupou. So this isn't me pushing DJ Reader out the door at all. This is not that at all. That said, I think the Bengals go defense with their next 3 picks. Darius Rush, round 3, Kobe Turner, round 4, Keandre Coburn, round 5. Other guys in round 5, by the way, or let's just do this, rounds 4 and 5 to keep an eye on. I do think this is a sweet spot for wide receiver. Parker Washington out of Penn State makes a lot of sense if they're looking for a slot-only type guy. He's like my height. He's like 5'9 and a half, but he weighs over 200 pounds, so he's stocky, could be a quality slot receiver. Ivan Pace out of the University of Cincinnati, someone to keep an eye on. And then we already addressed tight end, but Will Mallory and Josh Wiley out of Miami and the University of Cincinnati, respectively, I think those 2 guys are in the mix. Zach Kuntz, to me, a little earlier. I know people would want to know where he would go. I think round 3 would make sense for him, the Old Dominion product that tested really well. Other candidates in round 5, Sean Tucker would make sense. The Syracuse running back who just tested the other day because he was dealing with some injuries, had his own pro day at Syracuse, did 29 reps on the bench press. Someone to pay attention to for sure, was productive there for the Orangemen. And then safety Anthony Johnson Jr., someone to monitor. He is not in play, I don't think, on the first 2 days, but could safety be in play at this stage of the draft? Of course. You go BPA, and so maybe he would be up there. All right, round 6, I have a quarterback. Clayton Tune, quarterback out of Houston. I like his game. I think he's an accurate passer. I think he can develop into a quality backup in the NFL. And if he's there at the end of round 6, you feel really good about it. The Bengals have done their homework on quarterbacks this offseason. Let's face it, whether it's looking at Cooper Rush in free agency before he ultimately re-signed with the Cowboys, they've met with multiple quarterbacks during the pre-draft process. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is another candidate, the UCLA product. But to me, if Clayton Tune is there, I think they would look at him and say, you know what, he could fit exactly what we want to do. A couple of other guys to pay attention to, round 6, Jake Witt, they met with him. Offensive tackle, Trey Tucker out of the University of Cincinnati, they met with him multiple times. Deuce Vaughn out of Kansas State. I think he's projected to go earlier. Man, he's small. He didn't test great. And at this stage of the draft, I could see him certainly piquing the Bengals' interest. And then another running back out of Northwestern, Evan Hull, if he's still here, even if the Bengals take a running back, let's say they go with Jahmyr Gibbs round 1, I think Evan Hull could be a guy, Hull, be a guy that the Bengals are in on in round 6. In round 7 is interesting. Pick 246, any punter. All right, list the punter. Whatever your favorite punter is, the Bengals could take a punter here. They may say, we're not going to wait around for undrafted free agency. We're not going to do that. We are going to get our guy right now, and I would respect it. I also think that you look at what they've done in the 7th round. They like taking someone that has a skill or has shown a little bit of something and try to maximize that. And, well, we haven't taken a wide receiver yet. And so Grant DeBose is a guy out of Charlotte that I think could be on their radar, someone that isn't how do I put this? He's not super refined. He's only played the position for a couple of years, but 6'2", 201, got good size. You could develop him as a special teamer, and maybe he becomes a contributor in some role and is able to make the roster down the line. That's what you're talking about with these 7th rounders. And last year, just to give you an idea, he had 63 receptions for 787 yards and 9 touchdowns in 12 games. I think that they'll find a receiver at some point. It might just pass them by because it's a bad wide receiver class. And while I think it's a priority for them, I also don't think they can reach at a receiver that they don't feel is worth the round. So, like, they're picking at the end of every round. Let's say you want Tyler Scott out of the University of Cincinnati. I think he would be in a normal year, probably a 4th rounder. You're talking about a small burner. He's projected to go in round 2. I don't think the Bengals are going to take Tyler Scott in round 2. He's certainly expected to be off the board before the Bengals are on the clock at 92. And even then, do you want to take him in round 3? So there's a lot to it, but I think that the Bengals, this would be quite a haul for them. You know, Jahmyr Gibbs, plug and play, followed by Sam Laporta, Darius Rush, Kobe Turner, Keandre Coburn, Clayton Tune, Grant DeBose. 3 defensive players, 4 offensive players, including a quarterback. What do you think about the mock? That's what I think the Bengals are going to do. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell. We have you covered all weekend long right here. Make sure you check out allbengals.com as well in the Locked On Bengals podcast. And for Andrew Fox Miller, congrats, man. You made it through my mock draft. I'm congratulating Andrew because he had to do all of this editing. Man, shout out to Fox. I'm James Rapien. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on draft day right here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk.